In 2013, we decided to hold a number of events and activities to mark the 100th anniversary of the Great Dublin Lockout, the most important industrial dispute in our history. One of the first big events was the Dublin City Council's One City, One Book, and it had a phenomenal response. I was really amazed to hear that it was the biggest and most successful One City, One Book festival they had ever had. That really, I think, set the kind of platform for events for the rest of the year. It kind of got people's interest, it got people thinking about it, it got people reading about it. One of the next big events was the garden party that the President and Mrs. Higgins held.
It's probably the most important event in the history of the trade union movement in Ireland, but it's also maybe one of the 3 or 4 great founding moments in Irish history of all time. It was an extraordinary act of courage and sacrifice, and really all trade union rights are fundamentally based on their courage, because the union was brought to a very low point, but it wasn't beaten, and the bigger battle was won.
In fact, we had the tram, the 1913 tram, was up in the Iris in the garden, and lots of people from the various communities that had been involved in supporting the commemorative year all came together, and it was a great day.
Well, I think it's really exciting for children growing up in Dublin today to think back to what it was like to live in Dublin in 1913. So they can go down lots of streets in Dublin today that are very similar to what they were like more than 100 years ago when their grandparents were alive.
One of the events that I think probably got the most people to attend was the tenement experience in Henrietta Street.
I'm heading out to Croydon Park.
What are you going to Croydon Park for?
I saw PT Daly yesterday before he locked himself in the Liberty Hall. He said Larkin's going to speak there today, so come on!
Larkin's going to speak on Sackville Street, dead or alive. Now that's where we're going.
He's going to Sackville Street! Come on then! Come on!
Where he's going? We're going to Sackville Street. Larkin said he'd be there, dead or alive.
Yeah, we'll just get back here more alive than dead, will yous?
This came about as a result of a partnership with the City Council, who provided the wonderful building. Then the Irish Heritage Trust, along with Congress, came together and we selected ANU, the theatre company, to put in place an experience about living and working conditions and what the 1913 lockout was all about. So that took place in Henrietta Street for just over 2 months. It had record-breaking attendance. In fact, it was sold out and oversubscribed, and I know a lot of people were very disappointed that they didn't get to see it, but we will have footage of that available, footage of the actual experience on the 1913 website.
Mary, what does this say?
I will not join as a support any union. I know what I signed, Charlie. You don't have to read it out to me.
You should be ashamed of yourself, you know that? Putting your name to this. Our name, our father's
It's
name.
only a piece of paper.
A piece of paper. Mary, would you sign that?
It's over, Charlie.
It's not over. It can't be over.
The exhibition in the National Library was launched at the end of the summer, and it was another collaboration, this time with the National Library of Ireland, and involved the National Archive people as well.
I think it's a really important time in Irish history, you know, to remember things like this in 1916. They were so pivotal in the way we live now, the changes that happened in the country, you know.
So I came to the exhibition because I was walking on the street and I come from Belgium and don't know anything about the Dublin Lockout, so I wanted to learn a few things.
It is a detailed exhibition which gives the history and background to the events running up to the lockout, during the lockout, and the aftermath of the lockout, and well worth seeing. It runs until about March 2014. So anybody that wants to get an insight to what it was all about, you can get it all in the National Library exhibition.
Dublin was a deeply divided city, where a third of the population lived in city centre tenements and cottages in terrible poverty.
The exhibition at Collins Barracks, it's 3 exhibitions in one, and it is a permanent exhibition that will be around for, I think, the next couple of years, that's focusing on 1913 and I suppose the whole decade, the revolutionary decade, bringing people on to 1916 and beyond. There are two temporary exhibitions were earlier in the year, and they involved the Banners Unfurled, which was an exhibition of trade union banners from the period. And some of them are the original banners and some of them are copies of the original banners. And then there were more recent banners. And then accompanying that was the tapestry. This wonderful tapestry that has been worked on for the last couple of years was cased up and was on display in the Barracks. The 31st of August was the National Day of Commemoration. Thousands of people turned up. The President presided at the event, and it involved the leaders of the trade union movement, all laid wreaths to commemorate those that had lost their lives on the 31st of August, which in fact was the 100th year anniversary of Bloody Sunday. And we were also acknowledging all those that had suffered and lost their lives as a result of this huge dispute that took place during the year. Immediately after the national commemoration piece, there was a community piece, which was probably the highlight of the day, where volunteers dressed up in the appropriate costumes from 1913, and we had representatives from the Dublin Metropolitan Police dressed up in their costumes, and there was a reenactment of the baton charge. We basically took that photograph that everyone has seen during 1913's commemorative year of the baton charge, and what they did was they just did that kind of snapshot where they stood still and held it for 30 seconds. We were really delighted to be involved in partnership with the Dublin Fringe Festival and of course with ICTU Productions, and they put on 13 different events that kind of built incrementally to tell the stories of 1913, but importantly for us, to actually tell the story about decent work nowadays.
You know, 100 years ago, that one Rosie Hackett who got the bridge, she just said no. Just said a simple no.
Liberty Hall was wrapped in this enormous banner on 3 sides, which told the story of the 1913 lockout on 3 dimensions. One, the social and living conditions at the time, the role of organising and unions and bringing people together to campaign for their rights. And the third aspect was the solidarity that was shown by people here at home and by the trade union movement in Britain, which helped support the action here in Dublin. So it's a tremendous, iconic building that's now covered, telling the story of 1913 for all to see and learn about. The food ship reenactment took place on the 5th of October, and that was as close as we could get to the actual anniversary of the first food ship, the SS Hare, coming into Dublin with supplies from the British Trade Union Confederation. So we had a huge reenactment of that. What we were commemorating was the solidarity that was shown, that helped those people that were in dispute, families that were really suffering. This aid was a vital aid at the time. The food ship involved also leaders from the trade union movement in Britain joining the ship and coming across to mark the occasion, which we were delighted to see. We also used the occasion of the day to make a donation to the Children's Hospital in Crumlin.
This donation means a huge amount to us, and I think it's very poignant that it's been given to us on a day where aid had come from the UK to the workers back in 1913.
I was quite surprised that young people had such an interest in 1913, not just 1913, but in understanding their history. So that was really encouraging to begin with, but for us what we've done specifically to engage with younger people is that we have redeveloped our schools project, which was already in existence.
This project that we're launching today, in many ways it is the most important because it is about handing on those values to another generation of people through the schools, which is particularly important to the work of our teacher union members and the students themselves, that they will get an understanding of all of this and they will carry it forward to the next generation.
Part of what we're doing is putting in place a project whereby we're encouraging groups in schools to enter a film about decent work into a competition, and the winning entry is going to end up travelling to New York. It's really hard to pick a favourite moment because there have been so many, from the tenement experience to the national commemoration to the event up in the Arras to the James Plunkett Short Story Award. There have just been so many different events that have taken place, and I suppose if I was to say what has been my favourite thing, it's not necessarily an event. It's the fact that there's been such tremendous engagement by communities in making them happen, and such tremendous participation by the public in the events. So it's great to know that it's been a success. It's been a tough year organisationally, making it all happen, and there have been great people working on this project. And I think that's been one of the successes, the people who've made it happen. But I really do think it's been worth it. It's been worth it for the trade union movement, and I do think from a public perspective it's been worth it. And I think if I can even just recall Fintan O'Toole in the Irish Times commentating on the commemorative year, and he said this is the model for how it should be done. And if nothing else, if we've done that, sure, it's been more than worth it.